Okay, now I will show you how to trace this piece with the tracing wheel. You cannot really rub off this piece because your front piece is kind of covering this, so it's harder to rubbing up and tracing this one. So I will show you how to use tracing wheel to trace. So the reason we are using the tracing paper, I mean the dotted paper, is you have the kind of guideline, so it can be accurate. So you will use push pin, and then you will pin on the guideline that you draw here. And here. And then try to make it flatten as much as possible. But you need to make sure you will not make it stretch. Okay? Make it flatten, but do not stretch, like all the way up like this. Don't do that. Just make it flat. And with your tracing wheel, where you trace is going to be your thin line. So here. Okay? So you will use your tracing wheel to trace. Here same, it's hard to show from this angle, but you will trace this armhole line. Same thing, the seam here. And then neckline here. Okay, then remove. And you will use ruler to trim lines. And then, to double check whether you did correctly, I will use my ruler, maybe use measuring tape, and then see, so 3 1/4, like that. And then make sure you measure several spots to see whether you, traced your pieces correctly. Like that, okay? So we trace the yoked piece. So actually this is easy. So we're gonna trace the difficult piece now. So I'm going to trace the sleeve. Like this. And try to use this guideline. So I may draw a line, straight line, as a guideline before I start. And then I try to make this guideline on the shirts to follow this straight guideline. That way, once you mirror this one, you know, you can make the other side copy correctly. So try to make these stitches that I made is following this one. So you can do that until you meet these start points. Because it's folded, it has angle like this, so you cannot really make it like that, okay? And then we will need to use this darting intake anyway to extend later on. So you don't need to really worry about matching this seam, like stitches, with this straight line. But one thing that you need to make sure is you need to put the marking here so you know where dart end done, okay? Then after that, you pinned this side, you will flatten the overall the sleeve. Okay. So because we gonna have a dart line here, I will mark like outside here. So you will not need to really use tracing wheel because you see the seam here. So I will actually use my pencil to trace this outside line. But when it comes to armor line here, you will need tracing wheel again. And again, you will need to trace your seam line. To draw your armhole line. Okay. And then one more thing that you need to mark here is going to be this flap. Okay? So you will need to mark where it is and then where it ends. Okay. Then we will mirror this piece into this side to copy the other side. And then make sure you mark this upper armor line. Okay. Then make sure you match this armor line here, and then following this stitch again, match with the guideline that we draw in earlier. And then same thing here, you should have some gap. I marked where the armhole line ends. And then again, this line, you can just trace outline. And then here. And then with the tracing wheel, you trace this small armor line. Okay. So now I can trim lines with the ruler. Okay. Then one more thing to check is going to be measuring this starting take. Okay, so with ruler you may measure. So this is about 3/4, 3/4, and you have to double it because you have this and then inside this. And actually it is the same amount that you got here, but you need to make sure these are the same with this side. Starting take. So actually, you don't really need to do anything in terms of the expanding lines here, but you will need to put the mark where this is needed, okay? So this is a slit here, and then your dart place is actually from slit to quarter, 2.25 inches. Yeah, so exactly here is going to be the dart place, and then this is going to be the dart for your sleeve. So you will need to make sure this is identical in terms of the amount. Okay? Then you got the sleeve pieces done. So far we got the cuffs and the color pieces by rubbing of the pieces, and then we got sleeve done, and then we got the yoke done. So we will trace the front pieces and back pieces, and then I think we got all pieces done. So front pieces, it has some open darts, which is a little tricky to trace. So what we're gonna do is actually involved with some rotating, okay? So what we're gonna do, we will trace upper piece first. And then after we trace upper piece, we will actually rotate to make sure this have the darts open. So to trace these darts, okay? So let's make sure this is following until here, and then you will need to pin on the dart end here. So there is a dart, and then you will need to pin on the dart end here. As you can see from this start end, you can make following this, center theme, following this guideline because of this start. So that's how it works, okay? So you can only make matching this pencil guideline with center seam until you have dart end here, okay? And then you will pin. Okay. So I will use tracing wheel to trace here, and then here, and then here, then here. So, and then you will need to make sure you trace this start line too. And then you will need to trace one more time, we rotate the pieces, okay? So make sure you trace this and this. Then now, you should not move these the two pins. So these two pins should be here when you rotate this. Then now, after removing pins, you now bring this one here. And then now you can pin. Like this. And then again, this time, you will need to trace this line again because it actually was moved from up here to down here. Then I can trace this line. Okay. Now, let's see how the dart is traced. I don't know whether you can see from. So I will trace really quick. As you see here, we got these two dart legs created by rotating after we trace the upper part. So actually to get this dart end, you will need to fold this pattern piece. And then, dart intake should go low, right? So you should fold your paper and then put in the extra to the, So after you fold this pattern paper and then using tracing wheel, and then you will get this dart end, okay? Then you will need to add seam allowance to this piece, okay? So we got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces copied. So now I will show you how to trace piece with fishy eye darts, which is going to be this piece. So I will draw the guideline again. And then you can either fold your piece like this, or you can open. So I actually prefer opening the piece because tracing works better in the way. But I will try to pin on the guideline that I draw. And then I use my pin to find the guideline. And then I use my pin to this. Okay. So, I think I make it too stretch somehow. Okay. So make sure you don't make it stretch, but just to flatten as much as you can. And then I will trace the bottom. And then I will trace the sideline. Then I will do this, and then I will do this. Okay. Then one thing that you need to make sure is you will need to trace this fishy eye dart. So fishy eye dart, actually the seam here is going to be the center line, and then you will expand the line into this, like each side later on. So I will actually mark where the M each side, okay? And then the line is not really straight because this is fabric. So after you trace, actually you will make a straight line. Okay, so after removing, I will trace really quick to show you. And then I will not really trace this line because this line actually needed to be expanded a little bit. So I will only trace this much. And then I will trace the bottom. Then it will be here. And then it's and here. And I will draw a straight line here. So this is the start center. And then one thing that you need to do is how much this is, there is a dart intake. So this is a half inch dart. Half inch dart. Which means 1 inch dart. So let's measure whole thing. This is about 14 inches, so around 7 inches. There should be a half inch each side. And then you will create a fishy eye dart. So to make it actually identical, you can fold and then trace this line. but I'm going to just draw a fishy dot here. So after you are adding this darting tag in the center, the tracing line is here, but this line needed to be expanded about 1 inches outside because we are taking in by sewing these darts. Okay, so 1 inch, and then with the ruler, use line like this, and then here I trace until the point. Like that. Okay, so I got my side line done by doing this way. Okay, so again I showed you 3 darts tracing. So first one was the sleeve. So because we traced, like this way, following the guideline, there was a gap. So by using those gap, actually we could trace this dart. So only thing that left was the locating the dart place. Second dart was actually most difficult dart to trace was this open dart, French dart here. What we did is we traced the upper portion until this point, and then we rerotated, and then traced the other side to get this dart intake. And then third method was the fishy dart. So we traced outside, and then we calculated actually the dart intake to expand this waistline. Okay, so we got all the pieces except this piece. So I told you there are 3 techniques. One is going to be the rubbing up. The other one is using tracing wheel to trace out. Third one is actually measuring, and then the create. So this is actually rectangular pieces. So you measure, and then draw the pieces here, and then add the seam allowance, and then you may put the buttonholes to create these pieces. Then you create all pieces.